This is Andy here with Libertarian Revolution, and I have a really awesome guest here today. I'm here with the Dollar Vigilante, Mr. Jeff Berwick. So I'll start off the question, how did you come up with the nickname, the Dollar Vigilante? It sounds kind of like a superhero.
Yeah, interesting story. I'm a bit of a marketing guy. I had an internet company in the 90s, and it actually took me a while to come up with the name for that. It's called stockhouse.com, and that still is the #1 financial website in Canada. And I went on afterwards, I found out about central banking, about libertarianism, anarchism, and I decided I wanted to start a newsletter to tell people about how the central banking system works, how everything in the financial system is all a lie, a scam, Ponzi scheme, that sort of a thing. And it took me about a year to come up with the name. I figured, you know, as a marketing guy, I'm like, it has to have the perfect name, and I couldn't come up with it. And I was walking by a TV somewhere, and they were talking about bond vigilantes. And if you don't know what bond vigilantes were, they were in the 70s. It was actually people like George Soros. He used to be kind of a good guy. And they would keep the central banks and the governments in check. If they went too much into debt or printed too much money, they would start selling their bonds and cause, like George Soros caused the Great British pound to crash by doing that. So they kept the central banks and governments in check back in the 70s by selling bonds. But now they print so much money, they're not restricted by anything, and we have 0% interest rate, so you can't do that anymore. So I was walking by, heard the word bond vigilante, and I thought, bond vigilantes, I wish we could still do that. What we need today, just off the top of my head, I went, man, we need dollar vigilantes, people who sell dollars if they don't like the system. And right in that moment I went, Dollar Vigilante, that's it. And started it up, bomb logo just came to me, and we went from there.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the character in the movie V for Vendetta. Now, anyway, were you political at all growing up or in your like early 20s or anything? Were you at all political?
Very embarrassed. I have two embarrassing stories. When I was like 14, I looked at the world and I said, why do we have all these wars and all this poverty and all these problems? And I gravitated towards, I lived in Canada, the Conservative Party in Canada. I thought, okay, it was actually Brian Mulroney at the time, if you know who that is. And I thought, okay, these guys make a lot more sense than those socialist guys. And I actually joined, I became a member of the Conservative Party. And
how old were you?
I was like 14 or 15
or
wow. something. And right away, within a few months, I was like, this isn't the answer, this is total BS. And I was like, I don't know what the answer is, but it's not politics. And I just left it, went and built a bunch of businesses. And after my internet company kind of crashed after the 2000 tech bubble collapse, I met Doug Casey, and he said, you know what you are, don't you? You're a libertarian. And I said, what's that? I didn't even know that word back in the year 2000. It was like not a very well-known word. Look at the growth of it now. And then afterwards he said, you know what you are, don't you? And I said, what? He said, an anarchist. And I actually thought he meant like those people who riot in the streets.
Throwing bombs.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. I got into it after that. The second most embarrassing story, and this is much more embarrassing because I was an actual adult at the time, when I was about 21 or 22, I ran for city council in Vancouver. I actually almost won.
What party did you run under?
I think I was independent.
Oh, you meant you were an independent, that you didn't have a political party? Or
right.
was, okay.
Yeah, and all I knew was everything's screwed up in Vancouver, so I'll just join it and try to fix it. I signed up and I started my internet company around the same time, and I got so busy I didn't do anything. The kind of funny story is I almost won. I never did anything, no one knew who I was. It's just like no one even knows who these city councilor members are, so they're just like ticking boxes.
Checking names won randomly.
Luckily I didn't win. Can you imagine? Like if I was a city councilor guy still in Vancouver, what I would have become?
Who knows? Yeah, yeah. Now I understand you were involved in the Libertarian Party of Canada at one time, and didn't you actually run for Prime Minister?
No, but I did say I was going to run for the Libertarian Party. I don't know if you saw him here, but Tim Moan, the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, he's an anarcho-capitalist. I met him, I was talking to Lauren Southern as well, she's quite well known, and I said, let's get a bunch of us quite well-known people and run for the Libertarian Party and just like talk about all of our anarchist sort of stuff on the media and stuff like that. Again, I put my name down, and it was so political. All the political stuff is such a nightmare. Even within the Libertarian Party, so all these like people fighting over should I run, shouldn't I run, and I was just like, guys, I'm not even going to do this. I was trying to raise awareness for the party.
So you dropped out of the race?
I dropped out before I even actually put in the nomination.
Oh, okay. And how long were you involved in the Libertarian Party in Canada?
It was just that short period of time.
Okay.
I know the guys like Tim. I'm a huge fan of Tim Lone. He's a 100% anarcho-capitalist. He wants to just basically get rid of the government. He's the leader of the Libertarian Party, so I 100% support him. I don't support people like Gary Johnson and Bill Weld.
Oh, they're terrible.
Well, they're not even liberal. Well,
yeah, I'm an American and I'm a member of the Libertarian. I'll tell you, I've been a member. I joined the Libertarian Party at a young age, back in 1996. I found out about it, slipping through the channels. I saw Harry Brown on C-SPAN. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was fantastic.
Awesome.
And then after Harry Brown, I discovered Ron Paul and a bunch of other people.
Awesome
and so, anyway, and I'm still a member of the Libertarian Party today. But in my opinion, the Libertarian Party in the U.S. has really gone off kilter. And I don't think they've even had anybody as a presidential candidate that I would call a libertarian since 2004 when Michael Badnarik ran. Bob Barr was a joke. Gary Johnson was a joke. Bill Weld was just absolutely terrible. So now I understand. I heard a story that you actually met Gary Johnson. You had a confrontation with him somewhere.
Yeah, I was at Freedomfest in Las Vegas, and I had had a few drinks, and I heard there was a Libertarian Party cocktail party upstairs, and I had no bad intentions or anything. I was like, yeah, if I run into Gary Johnson, I just want to ask him, because back then I was like not sure if he was libertarian or not, and now I know he's basically.
I was skeptical about him from day one.
Yeah, I didn't know much about him, but what I heard, I'm like, he doesn't even sound like he's libertarian. So I went up and I'm at this cocktail party, and all of a sudden Gary Johnson's just right there. And I went, oh, hi, Gary. One question. Are you a real libertarian? And he lost it. He went nuts. He started freaking out. And he's like, he got right in my face. He got like this, started yelling. Like, I couldn't even understand what he's saying. He's spitting in my face. His bodyguards came up. I thought I was going to get beat up. And some people pulled him off and told him who I was. And because I had a bunch of people there who knew who I was. And afterwards he came up and he's like, oh, so sorry, I didn't know who you were. I'm like, well, what does it matter who I am? I was just asking you a question. You know, why are you so defensive about being asked?
I think you hit a sore spot with it. He probably knew he's not really a libertarian, and you probably kind of were exposing him.
Exactly.
Anyway, so you think that what do you think is going to happen with the cryptocurrency market this year?
Anyone's guess. Last year was, of course, just absolutely massive. We needed this pullback we're currently in. I think we could pull back quite a bit more, possibly, but not for sure. We could still see another big rise this year. It kind of depends on the entire financial markets, because really the cryptocurrencies have been propped up a lot by the central bank money printing that's been going on since 2008. This is like, it is a bubble in many ways. Maybe not Bitcoin as much as the alts. If you look at Ethereum, 1 year ago today was like $20. Now it's like $800. So these things have gone up exponentially. If the entire financial system crashes, the stock market crashes, the bond market crashes, it's possible the cryptocurrency market could crash along with it. Although, if the crash is bad enough, you can see people fleeing and trying to get into cryptocurrencies. So this is a very interesting time. So I've actually suggested to subscribers just recently, be prepared for either a big rise or a big fall in the next few months. And actually, I said that before this fall happens. We've already had one of the falls. It's going to be volatile. There's really no way to know. There's too much going on. I've said this so many times. I try to look at everything going on in the market each month, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of important data points. This central bank just said they're going to do this. This government just said it's illegal there. This company just started using it. This bank's going to use it. This one isn't. It's like, it's really hard to tell what's going to happen. But for people out there who don't own any cryptocurrencies, definitely buy some, because once you buy them, you realize what they are. Until you actually have used it, you don't really know what it is. You just think it's some weird computer money. Once you see the power of having your own money in your own hands. The first time I got my first Bitcoin, 2011, when it was $3, a guy said, do you know what Bitcoin is? I said, no. He said, open a wallet here, opened a wallet at blockchain.info. He said, okay, what's your code? He hit his phone. It went beep on my computer, and I had actually sent me like 10 Bitcoins or so. It was like $30. And I said, what do I do with it? And he said, oh, you can go buy an ebook right now. There's a store that sells them. I bought, with those 10 Bitcoins, an ebook from him.
Can you say who that person was?
Trace Mayer.
Oh, okay. I've heard of it.
Yeah. So within 1 minute, I had heard about Bitcoin, opened a Bitcoin wallet, received Bitcoin, and spent it. And in that moment, I went, this changes everything.
How did you know Bitcoin was going to be big? I mean, I remember hearing about it back in 2011, and my first reaction was it sounded like it was video game money. You know what I mean? I didn't even take it seriously until about a year later is when I started to look into it more deeply. But how did you, was it because of Trace Meyer, or how did you know, you know what I mean? What gave you the confidence that Bitcoin was going to be something big?
Well, I started the Dollar Vigilante in 2010, and the Dollar Vigilante's tagline is surviving and prospering during and after the dollar collapse. And I said in 2010, the US dollar and all fiat currencies will collapse by the end of the decade, which is 2020. We still have 2 years left, and I think we're on track for that. A lot of people asked me in 2010, okay, if they're all going to collapse, what's going to take their place? And being an anarcho-capitalist, I said, I don't know, but I'm sure the market will come up with something. So 1 year later, when I found out about Bitcoin and understood monetary theory and how money works and what money is, as soon as I saw it, I went, this is going to be huge. However, I didn't buy a ton, and the reason was it was so small, $3. The only way to buy it was on a Japanese
Mount Gox that got robbed.
Well, yeah. It was like Magic the Gathering. That's what it was. It was a card trading site for fantasy cards in Japan, and I'm like, I don't know.
Was that what Mount Gox was?
Yeah, that's
I didn't know that.
Mount Gox, Magic the Gathering, and the guy got into Bitcoin very early, and he said, "Oh, let's put Bitcoin on the site," and that's what happened. So I didn't actually buy a lot back then, but it was around 2013 I started to really go, okay, this is huge, and that's when I really started talking about it.
When during, because I remember 2013, I think that's when there was the first really big run. It went up to like 266, then it crashed, then it went up to like around $1,200 and it crashed. Which run was it? Was it the run up over 1,000?
2015 was...
No, I think it did. It was, I'm pretty sure it was 2013, maybe early 2014. It went up to like over $1,000, then it crashed. But what run did you get in on?
I think the first time I bought was around 100 or so.
Okay. Do you know if that was before or after the crash? There was a crash in April of 2013. It went up to like 266 and then it crashed. Do you know if it was after that or before that?
I think it was after that.
Okay. Yeah. I know the time frame.
Because there was nowhere early to even buy it except for the Mt. Gox back then. And I was waiting. I was like, I'm going to wait till there's a few more places to buy. I don't have to send my money to Japan or whatever.
Now, are you still a Canadian citizen technically?
Yep.
Do you still you live in Mexico? You're here all year, or are you here most of the year?
I'm here as a tourist.
Okay.
I travel a lot, so you're allowed to stay here 6 months every time you come in. I like to live wherever I live as a tourist because if you're a resident or a citizen, they'll extort you, tax you, and they treat tourists really well. So that's part of prior taxpayer permanent traveler PT theory, which I'm a big proponent of, just coming out with a book on it, is to live in a place and not actually be a resident or citizen. So I'm actually here as a tourist.
Do you spend much time in Canada anymore?
No.
Okay. Now, did you marry a Mexican woman?
Yes.
But you have not applied for, you don't want Mexican citizenship?
Not as long as I live here. No.
Yeah, okay. Now, I want to get into something you had interviewed. I want to talk about your interviews with one you did with Adam Kokesh and another one you did with Lauren Southern. During an interview with Adam Kokesh, you were talking about what happened in Charlottesville and Christopher Cantwell and some of the stuff that would happen with him. And the subject, I think, during the interview of the United Nations population replacement plan was being talked about. So what's your thoughts on that as an anarcho-capitalist? And there's kind of some debate in the ANCAP community. Like there's the people like Lou Rockwell and Hans Hermann Hoppe that are kind of like saying you need to have private property, and then that if the private property society existed, immigration would be regulated by private property owners. And then there's other people, maybe like Larken Rose, that would say no, just rip the borders open right now, consequences be damned. What are your thoughts on that? And then what are your thoughts on what Christopher Cantwell, not that I'm agreeing with everything he said or anything, I'm just bringing it up because the interview you did with Kokesh, and I know Kokesh was friendly with him at one point. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that there's like a New World Order agenda in order to kind of bring down some societies by bringing in a lot of people and maybe enticing them with welfare and people who are maybe hostile cultures?
Oh, absolutely. It's plain to see. this plan that they actually have has gone back decades and centuries to do these sort of things. In general, the immigration thing, well, first of all, they go in with the U.S. military, the largest terrorist organization in the world. They bomb a country like Syria, beautiful place, just bomb it, make it so all these people have to flee. Then they bring them into places like Europe to really screw up the culture, get them into the democracy, and democracy is one of the most evil, horrible things in the world, and really screw everything up. They do all this stuff on purpose. This has been going on for a long time. As far as what do you do about it, we had the debate here with Larken Rose and Lauren Southern. Larken was pro, does get rid of the government right now, of course, and I would agree in general, but I think taking steps is probably the smartest way to go about it. Lauren was saying, no, I'm basically a libertarian, but I think we still need government and borders for this immigration issue. I disagree on that, but I'm very open-minded, and that's why they're at this conference. I'm open to ideas. Basically, my general thing is let's get government smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where essentially it doesn't even exist anymore. So that's why I support Adam Kokesh, who's running for the Libertarian Party under the platform of let's just get rid of the federal government, give it all back to the states. And I think that can actually sell to the public quite a bit. And a lot of people would really resonate with that because so many people are angry about whether it's Barack Obama or Donald Trump. I hate this guy. Well, why don't you just, California, why don't you just go have your little socialist little country there? And so I support anything that really reduces government, or actually it's kind of funny because I'd actually like to see more governments in the world. So with what Adam's doing, I'd like to see 50 governments. Like
Liechtenstein and Luxembourgs and stuff like that? Or
like in the US, go to 50 sovereign governments instead of the federal government anymore. And same in Europe, go and, the one world sort of government people, they want one government that manages everyone. I'm saying let's have more governments until we get to the point where we have 7 billion governments on Earth.
Well, yeah, it seems to me that the open borders agenda plays in with the New World Order and the socialists. Like I remember I was at a college campus in Ohio, and I went into their dorm, not the dorm, the student center, and there was a poster up on the wall about welcoming migrants, and it was put up by Socialist International. So I think the issue is a bit more complicated than some people realize, and I kind of look at it like dismantling government is like dismantling a bomb, and you pull the wrong wire out at the wrong time, the bomb could blow up in your face. Now, I like Larken Rose, and I probably agree with 99% of what I agree with him philosophically, but I just maybe have a few strategy disagreements. I like Lauren Southern as well, and I don't know if Lauren is a full-on ANCAP or if she's a mid-archist. She said, I watched her speech from Anarchapulco last year, and she showed a picture of Hans Hermann Hoppe. I don't know if she's a Hoppe and anarchist or what, but anyway, I think they both raised some legitimate points. And now another thing I wanted to say is when you were interviewing Lauren Southern, you were talking about or one of your interviews, I think it came up in this discussion with Lauren Southern about building like a libertarian society in Acapulco, like getting libertarians. Is there a community of libertarians here?
There is. It's nothing planned at all. It just turns out about 10% of the conference every year, they come down, they just end up staying here. It's nothing I've been planning, but it is turning into quite a few libertarians living here. But it's nothing planned whatsoever.
What do you think of what Roger Ver's doing with the Free Society project?
Fully support it.
Yeah.
I'm also a big supporter of Liberland, if you don't know about that. I'm actually a diplomat for Liberland.
Yeah.
And any sort of, a lot of people say, oh, you anarchists, you just want to get rid of all government. It's like, well, yeah, that's sort of like where we'd like to move to eventually, especially if we can wake people up and, get it all happening. But in the meantime, yeah, if we can have very libertarian, almost ANCAP countries that, for example, Liberland has taxes, but they're voluntary, so they're not really taxes. They're, I guess you could call them donations or something, or investments, actually. You're investing into the sort of the corporation of the country. We also had a person here from Free Cities. He's trying to get really broke governments who have like a city and say, we're going to buy the city. You guys leave us alone. This is our place. This is our sovereign city. And it'll be very incredibly libertarian. So I support anything like that, absolutely.
Now, you had said something during the interview with, I think Lauren Southern asked you, like, well, what would you do if the criminal thugs came into Acapulco and started messing it up, basically, and you said you would leave and go somewhere else, which I agree with. But do you think it's important to, like, if Liberland or one of these other projects was going to take off, that they would have to develop, like, a defense mechanism to kind of make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen? happen?
Yeah, and they do. Private defense forces, essentially.
Like a well-regulated militia?
Yeah, things like that. Just having the ability to own firearms in the country alone pretty much gives the place is very difficult. You have a place that people don't believe in government, they don't believe in taxes, and they own guns. Good luck taking that over and making them pay taxes. It's going to be definitely very bloody if they want to try. And with today's internet, if we have a little place in Liberland, it's a little 1 kilometer square area, we're building high rises, it's all peaceful and beautiful. If Serbia or Croatia comes in and starts killing everyone, that's going to be very bad news for them, and a lot of people will probably be calling for it to be stopped. So, you know, this is where we're at. We're trying to get at least a few free places in the world. And it's so interesting and funny that it's so hard. That's, you know, why is it so hard that can't we just buy an island like Roger Ver, and that's what he's trying now.
Yeah.
Just let us have one place, 1 mile wide, and just leave us alone for a little bit, just for a couple years at least, and let us try out. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't believe this can work. Well, let us try it, and that's all we're asking. And there's so many places that are trying these sort of things. But yeah, of course, the biggest risk is all the governments around it. Those are always the riskiest things. But in a lot of places, all these governments are broke. So if you come in with like Roger Ver, who's got a lot of money, and a lot of people with a lot of money want to move there as well, if you pay off the people around and you sign a contract saying you guys do not even come near us for at least 5 years until we can build up a Hong Kong, which would actually build up in like a couple of years. The amount of money that has been said that will go into Liberland if they can really get recognized as a country is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. It will turn into Hong Kong in the middle of Croatia and Serbia within like 2 years. And at that point, it'll be so rich and so wealthy that, you know, if they wanted to have, if they needed some sort of major force, like even a nuclear weapon, go to the most extreme sort of situation, they could probably just get one.
Yeah, now you've talked about the people in Mexico and that they're generally pretty nice and everything. And I just wanted to make a comment on Mexicans coming to the U.S. And I don't think, obviously, there's lots of people who are Mexicans, and some of them are great people. I have friends in the U.S. who are Mexican-American, and some of them are libertarian or paleo-conservative. I got a friend in California, and he's a Mexican paleo-conservative American, you know. But anyway, it seems that a lot of Mexicans, Hispanics, and a lot of foreigners in general who are currently coming to the U.S., when they become registered voters, and Stefan Molyneux has brought this up, that statistically, and I've investigated this myself, in supermajority numbers, they're voting for bigger government, expanding government welfare, more gun control laws, and they're also statistically in supermajority numbers getting on welfare. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, let's point out, because no one knows this, more Mexicans leave the U.S. every year to come back to Mexico than go to the U.S. This has been going on for 5 years straight now, because the economy in the U.S. isn't that great. The economy in Mexico is doing quite well, as you can see. I've talked to so many people, why'd you come back? Well, the economy's not that great up there, and there's no freedom. They're getting pulled over every day. They're getting their ICE checked, and and all that kind of stuff. So they're like, oh, we're out of here. But sorry, what was the part of the question?
Well, I was just asking, like, how come the people, and your experience obviously would mostly be with people in Mexico, but how come there's such a disproportionate move towards big government from modern day immigrants coming to America? I mean, do you think it just has to do with the type of people that the government is attracting as immigrants with the welfare state?
Yeah, when you've got a huge welfare state, what are you going to attract?
So you think that's the type of people that they're attracting, and that's not necessarily reflective of the people in the country?
Oh, absolutely not, no.
Yeah.
There's 100 million Mexicans. Like I said, there's more leaving the U.S. than going to the U.S. I know I've lived here for about 10 years. Hardest working people I've ever known. Nicest people in general. Of course, every place has good and bad people, all that kind of thing. But no, in general, I don't see that as a major problem. But talking about, I've heard these concepts that, yes, they're trying to bring in all these immigrants, and they're all going to vote Democrat. It's going to turn into a socialist or communist state. As an anarchist, I don't have a real big problem with the government getting bankrupted by all these people as quickly
what
as
I'd be
possible.
worried about, though, is kind of the aftermath. Because, like, if you have a population, like, let's say all the people here at Anarchapulco formed a society, it would be a very libertarian society, because pretty much everybody here is a libertarian, or at least a libertarian leader. But if you have people who don't really believe in liberty, they're Marxists, or they're theocrats, or whatever, just some sort of totalitarian outlaws or whatever you want to call it. I mean outlaw in a bad way, not in a libertarian way. Then I don't think the society that forms around those people is going to be libertarian.
Right. This is what happens.
Like the people have got to want it,
This is what happens with democracy. G. Edward Griffin gave a great speech today talking about democracy and how it always destroys itself. And even without immigration sort of issues, when you have a democracy, it will always end up how the U.S. is ending up right now. There's no way to actually stop it because that's the nature of the beast. Democracy is
the god that failed.
It is not a good thing. And so, you have all these people voting, all these sort of things. It's just a big mess. And you have, so the question I think is, you're living in the U.S., all this shit's happening, and you're like, well, how do we fix it? It's like, I don't know if you can fix it. That's how bad this democracy has gone down the road at this point. Mm-hmm. So many people are just getting out. Cynthia McKinney, the Congress...
Oh, yeah, I met Cynthia McKinney years ago, and I just talked to her, and I was hanging out with Adam Kokesh, and I was able to interview both of them.
Yeah, so. She just came out as an anarchist on the show.
Yeah.
And she lives in Bangladesh now. And someone asked the question, do you feel freer outside of the U.S.? And her answer was a resounding, yes, I did not know there was freedom like this. Because in the U.S., it has become a complete police state, regulation, taxes. It's the worst of all sort of government. It's half fascist, half socialist, and it's massive statist sort of contraption. So I understand, and of course, especially for my libertarian friends and brothers out there who are living in the U.S., I feel sad about what's going on. I don't think you can actually fix it. I think you got to let that thing collapse, get away from it for a little while if you can, and then go back, actually. Once it collapses, it could be an amazing place again. There's so many entrepreneurs in the U.S. who understand business and things like that. But this thing, I don't think there's any way to
I was born and raised in the U.S., and I just, I have like an emotional attachment,
sure.
and like I wish the government would actually follow the Constitution. Not that I'm an anarchist, but if government's going to exist, I think it should be limited by a Constitution, and I wish the politicians up there would follow it. So to people like myself who were born and raised in the U.S., it's like we want to try to save it, you know what I mean? And it just pains us to see all this stuff that's going on. Now, before I go here, one last thing I want to get into is so-called quote-unquote conspiracy theories. Now, I've for a long time, I got into 9/11 truth like early on, like right after, back in the 90s, I got into Libertarian, and I started finding out about the New World Order, and I read Jim Marsh's book, Rule by Secrecy, and I found out about Oklahoma City bombing, being a scam, and I knew they lied about things like the war in Iraq, and the Oklahoma City bombing, I guess I already mentioned, and Ruby Ridge and Waco. And then when 9/11 came out, I thought it looked suspicious, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to just go off and say, hey, it's an inside job unless I had evidence. And about 2 months later, or actually I guess it was about a month later, I actually was talking to a cart guy at a freaking Walmart, and he said, hey, you should check out, you ever listen to Alex Jones? I said, no. And he goes, yeah, you should check out this website, Infowars.com. And he wrote it down for me, and I was actually going to throw the paper out, and I looked at it, and I said, I'll look at this website. I went on the website, and he had a bunch of this stuff about 9/11, being an inside job, and I was like, whoa. And so I started...
his tune on now.
Yeah, well, no, he's still, something, I'll get into Alex Jones in just a moment. I'm not real happy with some of the direction he's gone in, but I'm not ready to I'm not going to throw the guy under the bus either at this point. But anyway, so what's your thought about, there are some in the I've been attacked. I started Libertarians for 9/11 Truth several years ago, and I have been attacked by some, not all people, but some people in the Libertarian movement for being a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist. And I've talked about, Sandy Hook being a false flag. I think, in my opinion, all or at least most of the big hyped up shootings that have happened, and I haven't had a chance to look into the most recent one, so I'm not commenting on that yet, but most of them, San Bernardino, Charleston church shooting, I think they were false flags. Yep. And what's your thought on false flag terrorism, and what's your thought specifically on libertarians or so-called libertarians who won't talk about it or attack those who do?
I don't see any reason to attack other libertarians over this issue. If they haven't looked into it, it is just blatantly obvious. If you look at 9/11, you can't knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes at free fall speeds, as Lucky Larry Silverstein says, pull it, while BBC actually announces the building has collapsed 20 minutes before it has, and there's no plane in the field in Pennsylvania, and there's no video of the plane hitting the pentagram. The day before, on September 10th, Donald Rumsfeld announced $2.3 trillion is missing. The next day, the accounting department, the pentagram blew up. if you can't see all that, then you should just not talk about it, in my opinion. But that's not a huge issue. Us libertarians, there's not enough of us. We shouldn't be infighting too much. If you disagree with someone on what they think happened on 9/11, I wouldn't let that get too big of an issue.
Yeah, and Mark Passio was just talking, and he gets into the occult stuff, and I know you've gotten into some of that as well. And you wrote a book, Shemitah Trends, and you've talked about numerology and stuff. And have you been attacked for that?
Like attacked physically?
Well, no, I mean attacked like people trash talking you, like you're just a crazy
Look me up on the internet. YouTube comments, of course I've been attacked.
Yeah. And actually, I just thought of one last thing. The Golf Off Chile, could you give me a brief synopsis of what happened with that?
Yeah, briefly. It was a real estate project that I tried to launch, or like 2013. Immediately got defrauded, but didn't realize it. I got lied to by lawyers in Chile. I got lied to by the guy I partnered with. I didn't even realize that they had got me out of the thing. They brought in about $10 million in investment, and basically they didn't run off with all the money. We're actually still in court getting the land back. It's actually not, the whole thing's not even over yet. I think we're going to get the land back. It's been in court for a couple of years in Chile, and I actually want to rebuild it after that. So
if you get it back, are you going to try to start like a libertarian society there?
I'm not sure about that, because it turns out the zoning issues are very difficult. It wasn't what they told us, but we might do something, but it won't be anywhere near as big of a plan as we had before. But the people who have invested in it should at least get something back in the order of 50% to 100%. It all depends on how it all works out. I do have some plans, possibly some sort of an ICO for it, and rebuilding it. But in general, what I'm trying to say is it's not over, and we're going to win. All the lawyers say we're going to win. It's just a matter of time.
Oh, last thing, since you brought up I brought up Alex Jones, and you made a comment about him. Now, I started following Alex Jones way back in 2001. And, he was never an establishment guy. He endorsed Michael Badnarik for president. I don't know if he endorsed Harry Brown, but he at least said good things about him. He was really big on Ron Paul. And then in the last election, he was actually supporting Rand Paul. And it was after Rand Paul got eliminated that he got behind Donald Trump. Now, in 2012, he actually endorsed Gary Johnson, but then he found out what a butthead Gary Johnson was and wasn't going to support him again for good reason. Now, I don't really agree with the decision that he made. I know there was there was a whole Libertarians for Trump, and there was Walter Block and Stefan Molyneux, and I still respect Stefan Molyneux myself. I still like him. I can sort of see where they're coming from, that okay, Hillary Clinton was a really terrible candidate. It was absolutely horrible, no question about it. Trump at least sounded like a maverick. Now, I agree with you. I never trusted Donald Trump. I knew about his connections and the people he surrounded himself with. So I never trusted the guy. But I can see why some people, they thought oh my God, this really terrible candidate, Hillary Clinton, is running. Gary Johnson's a joke. There's really nobody else to vote for. This Trump guy sounds like a maverick. Let's get behind this guy. So what are your thoughts on the people who were kind of libertarian or constitutionalist type people who decided to get behind Donald Trump?
Like you said, it's kind of understandable, but this is the game that is played with democracy. They've been doing this for decades or even centuries. And putting in someone like Barack Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, didn't have one day of peace his own presidency. It gets all the people on the right side. The left-right thing is actually all manufactured to keep everyone fighting. So when the left guy wins, the right guys go, 4 more years and then we can take it. And then when they win, they go, 4 more years. It just keeps them all infighting together. You can see, I said before the election, not many people did this. I said Donald Trump was going to win because I saw him go to a Jesuit function.
I saw that
with
too.
Henry Kissinger. And I said he just got the nod to win. That was about 2 weeks before. As he won, a lot of libertarians, I have to say, were kind of excited because it sounded, he's like, I'm going to look into 9/11. I'm going to reduce taxes. I'm going to stop the wars. He hasn't stopped the wars. He hasn't looked into 9/11. I said he wasn't. This is all a scam. He's a total insider.
And he was talking about draining the swamp, and yet he filled his administration with swamp
That's
creatures.
what they do.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks a lot for the interview, and good luck with everything. And check out the Dollar Vigilante. I highly recommend people go to the website, search for Dollar Vigilante. Also, Anarchast and Jeff Berwick. And thanks a lot. I appreciate it.